Welcome to Healthy Kidneys After 60. I am your host, Jane Pauley. We often think of our homes as our ultimate sanctuaries, the places where we are safest. But what if I told you that one of the most routine, relaxing parts of your day, your morning or evening shower, could actually be a hidden gateway to health risks you never saw coming? Today, we are peeling back the curtain on the bathroom door. Joining us is a man who has spent his career translating complex medicine into life-saving advice, CNN's chief medical correspondent, Dr. Sanjay Gupta. Sanjay, it is so good to have you here to help us navigate this.
Thank you, Jane. It's a pleasure to be with you. You know, in all my years of clinical practice and reporting, I've realized that we often overlook the simplest habits. For those of us over 60, the way we bathe isn't just about hygiene anymore. It's about preserving the integrity of our skin, our cardiovascular stability, and quite frankly, our independence. I'm looking forward to diving deep into why these small adjustments in the bathroom can make a world of difference in how we age.
Sanjay, I want to start with something that sounds almost counterintuitive. We've been told our entire lives that cleanliness is next to godliness, that a long, steaming hot shower is the best way to wash away the stress of the day. But lately, I've been hearing from so many of our viewers in their 60s and 70s who say they feel exhausted after a bath, or they notice their skin is flaking and itching more than ever before. It makes me wonder, why is it that the very same faucet, the very same bar of soap, and the very same routine we've had for 40 years suddenly starts feeling like an adversary once we hit a certain age? Is it just an inevitable part of getting older that we have to accept discomfort in exchange for being clean? Or is there something fundamentally changing inside our bodies that makes the traditional American shower actually dangerous for us?
That is such a profound way to frame it, Jane, because you're right. It feels like a betrayal by a habit we've trusted forever. But the science tells us a very clear story about why this happens. As we cross that 60-year mark, our skin undergoes a biological transformation. It becomes thinner, losing that fatty layer underneath that acts as both a cushion and an insulator. According to the National Institute on Aging, our skin also produces less oil as we age. So when you step into that steaming hot water, you aren't just washing away dirt, you are stripping off the very last line of defense your body has. The heat dilates your blood vessels, which is why people often feel that choppy or exhausted feeling afterward. Their heart is working overtime to compensate for the drop in blood pressure. And then there is the safety aspect, which is perhaps the most sobering part of this conversation. The CDC has released data showing that hundreds of thousands of emergency room visits every year in the United States are linked to bathroom injuries. For a younger person, a slip is a bruise. For someone over 60, a slip can be a life-altering event. We aren't just talking about dry skin here, we are talking about an environment where heat, moisture, and slippery surfaces create a perfect storm for the aging body.
It's frightening to think that a place of comfort can become a perfect storm so quietly. I think about the people listening who might be nodding their heads right now, remembering a time they felt a little dizzy or noticed a new crack in the skin on their legs. There's a certain fear that comes with that, a fear of losing the ability to take care of oneself. We see these commercials for luxury walk-in tubs and high-end soaps. But the real issue seems much deeper than what products we buy. Are we essentially over-cleaning ourselves into a state of vulnerability? Is the goal of being squeaky clean actually the very thing that is inviting infection and instability into our lives?
You've hit on the psychological heart of the matter. We are a culture obsessed with being squeaky clean, but for the aging body, squeaky often means you've stripped away the acid mantle, which is the slightly acidic film on the skin's surface that acts as a barrier to bacteria and viruses. When you destroy that barrier with high heat and harsh scrubbing, you're essentially leaving the door wide open for irritants and pathogens. It's not a destiny to have cracked, painful skin or to feel faint in the shower, but it is a sign that our manual for self-care needs an urgent update. We have to stop viewing the shower as a place to scrub away the day and start viewing it as a controlled environment where we must protect our temperature, our hydration, and our balance. Throughout our conversation today, I want to show everyone that by changing just a few small variables, the temperature of the water, the duration of the soak, and the way we treat our skin afterward, we can actually turn the bathroom back into a place of healing rather than a place of risk. We can protect our hearts, our skin, and most importantly, our ability to keep standing strong on our own 2 feet. It's about smart bathing, not just cleaning.
Sanjay, I've spent decades listening to the stories of Americans from all walks of life, and lately there is a recurring theme that keeps surfacing in my conversations with friends and viewers who have crossed into their 70s. It is a quiet, almost whispered anxiety about that moment when the steam clears and they have to step out of the shower. They describe this sudden, terrifying sensation of the world tilting just a few inches to the left, or their heart fluttering like a trapped bird against their ribs. It's a fear of that one split second where your body no longer feels like your own and the bathroom floor looks like a precipice. I wonder if you could help us understand why this specific moment, the transition from the water back to the world, becomes such a flashpoint for disaster as we age, and what is actually happening inside the body when that lightheadedness strikes.
Jane, what you are describing is a phenomenon I see far too often, and it reminds me vividly of a woman I spoke with not long ago named Margaret. Margaret is 74 years old and lives in Tampa, Florida, a place where the humidity usually makes people feel grounded, but for her, the bathroom had become a place of dread. She told me that for her entire life, a scorching hot bath was her ultimate joy of old age, her way of soothing her joints. But one Tuesday morning, as she reached up to grab her towel after a particularly long, hot soak, the room simply went black. She woke up on the tile with a fractured wrist and a deep sense of shame. What Margaret experienced is something we call orthostatic hypotension, exacerbated by heat. When you immerse yourself in very hot water, your blood vessels dilate, they open up wide to try and shed that heat. Your blood pressure begins to dip and your heart has to pump faster and faster to keep blood flowing to your brain. Then, the moment you stand up or reach for a towel, gravity pulls that blood down toward your legs, and your brain is momentarily starved of oxygen. For someone like Margaret, that one moment of joy turned into a fall that cost her 6 months of independence, and more importantly, it cost her the confidence to ever be alone in her own home again.
That story of Margaret is heartbreaking because it highlights how a simple reaching for a towel can become a life-changing accident. Many seniors have told me that once they fall, the psychological scar is almost worse than the physical fracture. They stop going out, they stop moving, and they begin to wither away out of fear. It seems so cruel that the very thing we do to relax can trigger such a violent reaction from our cardiovascular system. If we are feeling that floating or buoyant feeling when we step out, are we already in the danger zone? And is there a way to reclaim that safety without giving up the comfort of a warm wash?
We are absolutely in the danger zone when those symptoms appear, Jane, and we have to listen to them as if they were a siren going off in the room. The signs are usually there before the fall happens, that slight thumping in the chest, the feeling of being unmoored from the floor, or a sudden dimming of your peripheral vision as you stand. I told Margaret, and I tell everyone listening, that we have to change our relationship with gravity and heat. If I could ask every person over 60 to change just one thing tomorrow, it would be to lower the temperature to a lukewarm setting and to never ever rush out of the tub. We need to sit on the edge of the tub or a shower chair for a full minute, letting the blood pressure stabilize before we even think about standing up. Margaret eventually installed a simple grab bar and started using a bench, and she told me it felt like she had regained her throne. We have to realize that our bodies after 60 are like finely tuned instruments. They don't handle sudden shifts in pressure the way they did at 20. By slowing down the exit and cooling down the water, we aren't just preventing a fall. We are protecting the brain from that terrifying momentary blackout that has ended the independent lives of so many wonderful people.
There is a certain sensory satisfaction in hot water that is hard to argue with, Sanjay. It feels like it's reaching deep into the muscles, melting away the stiffness that seems to settle in our bones overnight. But I'm struck by the contradiction you've raised, that what feels like healing on the inside might be harming on the outside. We've been conditioned to believe that if the water isn't hot, we aren't really getting clean or stimulating our circulation, yet the medical advice seems to be moving in the opposite direction. Can you bridge that gap for us? Why is the science so adamant that our love affair with hot water needs to end? And what are the specific biological cries for help our skin is making when we ignore these warnings from institutions like the Cleveland Clinic or the National Institute on Aging?
It is a difficult truth to swallow because hot water feels like a hug, but to your skin, it's more like a chemical peel it didn't ask for. As we age, our skin loses its ability to retain moisture because the lipid barrier, the natural fats that glue our skin cells together, become sparse and thin. When you apply high heat, you are essentially melting those lipids away and rinsing them down the drain. The National Institute on Aging points out that elderly skin is significantly more prone to senile pruritus, which is just a fancy way of saying chronic, debilitating itchiness caused by dryness. When the water is too hot, it creates microscopic cracks in the skin surface. You might not see them at first, but you'll feel them as that persistent, tight feeling after you dry off. The Cleveland Clinic is very clear on this. Water should be kept at a lukewarm temperature, precisely because very hot water triggers an inflammatory response. It's a vicious cycle. You feel itchy, so you use hotter water to scald the itch away, which in turn destroys more of the skin barrier, leading to even more intense itching and even potential infections through those tiny cracks.
It sounds as though we are unwittingly stripping off our own armor and then wondering why we feel so vulnerable to the elements. I think many people equate that squeaky or tight feeling with being truly sanitized, as if we've successfully scrubbed away all the toxins. But you're suggesting that tightness is actually the sound of the skin screaming in distress. If we transition to this lukewarm life you're suggesting, are we still getting the therapeutic benefits for our circulation and our joints, or is this purely a sacrifice we have to make to keep our skin from falling apart?
It's not a sacrifice, Jane. It's an optimization. You can still get the circulatory benefits and the muscle relaxation from water that is around 98 to 100 degrees Fahrenheit, which is close to your body temperature. It doesn't have to be 110 degrees to work its magic. When you use lukewarm water, you are encouraging blood flow without causing the massive vasodilation that leads to the dizzy spells we discussed. You're also preserving that precious armor you mentioned. I often tell my patients to think of their skin like a delicate silk garment rather than a piece of heavy denim. You wouldn't wash a silk scarf in boiling water with harsh detergents, yet that is exactly what many of us do to our bodies every morning. By shortening the shower to 5 or 10 minutes and keeping the temperature moderate, you're allowing the skin to stay hydrated. This means fewer rashes, less need for medicated creams, and a much lower risk of the skin tearing when you accidentally bump against a piece of furniture. We have to move away from the idea that pain or intensity equals cleanliness. The goal for a 60-year-old body is preservation and gentleness. When you step out of a lukewarm shower, your skin should feel soft and supple, not like a drumhead that's been stretched too tight.
You know, Sanjay, when I walk down the soap aisle at the grocery store, I'm overwhelmed by the scents. Spring rain, ocean breeze, mountain sport, they smell wonderful. And for many of us, that scent is the hallmark of a good morning. We want to smell fresh for our grandkids or our spouses. But I've been hearing a different story from people who say that despite using the best smelling soaps, their skin is starting to look like parchment paper or a dry lake bed. It's confusing because we spend so much money on these products thinking we are pampering ourselves. Is there a hidden cost to these fragrances and heavy lathering agents that the marketing departments aren't telling us, especially for those of us whose skin has become more delicate silk than denim?
There is a very high cost, Jane, and it's often paid in discomfort. I remember a patient named Robert, a 72-year-old gentleman from Columbus, Ohio. Robert was a lifelong athlete, a guy who prided himself on staying active, and he had used a very popular sport brand of body wash for decades. It was highly fragranced, it produced a massive amount of foam, and it made him feel like he was back in the locker room after a big game. But as he hit his 70s, his skin began to revolt. He developed these angry red, scaly patches on his arms and legs that became so itchy they kept him up at night. He thought he had a fungus or a serious disease, but when we looked closer, the culprit was simply his soap. Those fragrances and the chemicals that create all those bubbles like sodium lauryl sulfate are incredibly harsh. They are designed to cut through grease, but on a 72-year-old skin, they cut through the natural oils that are already in short supply.
So poor Robert was essentially using an industrial-strength degreaser on his delicate skin every morning. I imagine he felt that if it didn't foam up, it wasn't working. It's a hard habit to break, isn't it? We've been trained since childhood that bubbles equal clean. How do you convince someone like Robert, who has a lifetime of habits, that the boring, fragrance-free, non-foaming soap is actually the superior choice for his health?
It's a major psychological shift, Jane. I had to explain to Robert that the Mayo Clinic and other leading dermatological experts specifically recommend soap-free cleansers or synthetic detergents called Syndettes for aging skin. These products don't foam much and they don't smell like a forest, but they have a pH level that matches your skin. I told him to look for words like fragrance-free, hypoallergenic, and moisturizing. It took some convincing, but once Robert switched to a gentle, creamy wash, his skin began to heal within 2 weeks. The redness faded, the itching stopped, and he didn't need the heavy steroid creams anymore. We have to realize that the clean smell we crave is often just a cocktail of alcohol and synthetic chemicals that act as irritants. For the senior population, the most luxurious thing you can do for your skin is to leave it alone as much as possible. A gentle, bland cleanser will remove the bacteria and sweat without destroying the skin's integrity. It's about choosing health over a momentary scent.
Sanjay, I want to challenge one of the most basic tenets of our daily routine. Most of us were raised with the idea that a daily shower is a non-negotiable part of being a civilized adult. If you skip a day, you feel grimy or lazy. But as you've been explaining the fragility of aging skin, I'm starting to wonder if we are simply doing it too often. Is the daily shower a biological necessity for a 70-year-old, or is it a social construct that is actually doing more harm than good? I know Harvard Health has had some interesting things to say about this, and I'm curious if we need to give ourselves permission to skip the soap and water more often than we think.
That is exactly what the science is suggesting, Jane. We have to ask ourselves, what are we trying to accomplish? If you aren't sweating profusely or getting physically dirty every day, the biological need to scrub your entire body with hot water every 24 hours just isn't there for an older adult. Harvard Health has noted that for many people, especially those with dry or sensitive skin, bathing just a few times a week is more than enough to maintain hygiene. When we bathe every single day, we never give our skin a chance to replenish its natural oils. We are constantly in a state of stripping the armor. I often suggest to my older patients that they try targeted washing, cleaning the essential areas like the underarms, the groin, and the feet daily, but perhaps only doing a full immersion shower every 2 or 3 days. It sounds scandalous to some, but your skin will thank you for it.
I can hear the gasps from some of our listeners now, the ones who pride themselves on their morning ritual. But it makes sense if you think about the skin as a living, breathing organ that needs time to repair itself. If someone is struggling with eczema or that terrible winter itch we all get, is less truly more? And when we do skip those days, are we actually helping our immune system by not constantly washing away the beneficial bacteria that live on our surface?
Absolutely. Our skin is home to a microbiome, a whole ecosystem of good bacteria that help fight off the bad ones. When we overwash, we disrupt that balance. For someone with eczema or chronic dryness, every shower is a trauma to the skin barrier. I've seen patients whose chronic rashes completely cleared up simply because they stopped showering every morning. They switched to every other day, used lukewarm water, and kept the duration under 5 minutes. If you must shower every day for your mental health or to wake up, I suggest you don't use soap on your arms, legs, or trunk every time. Water alone is often enough to rinse away dust and sweat without dissolving the skin's protective fats. We have to stop viewing our bodies as something that needs to be disinfected and start viewing them as something that needs to be nourished. The daily shower is a relatively modern invention, and for the aging body, it might be an invention that's past its expiration date.
We've talked a lot about the biology of the skin, but I want to return to that terrifying physical risk of falling. It's the boogeyman of aging, the fall that leads to the broken hip, which leads to the hospital, which often leads to a loss of the home. It feels so sudden, like a lightning strike. But you've mentioned that the body often sends out little flares, warning signs that we are on a collision course with the floor, and that we often ignore them because we just attribute them to getting older. I'm thinking of those who feel a bit shaky or find themselves leaning against the wall more often. How do we distinguish between just a slow morning and a legitimate medical warning that our bathroom routine is about to fail us?
You're so right, Jane. It's rarely a lightning strike. It's usually a slow-moving storm that we refuse to see. I remember a woman named Helen, 79 years old, from Grand Rapids, Michigan. Helen was a very proud, independent woman who loved her Michigan winters, but she insisted on taking very hot, long showers every single morning to thaw out her joints. She started noticing that her shins were so dry they were actually rom mao, oozing tiny droplets of blood, because the skin was cracking like a desert floor. But she also noticed something else. Every time she stepped out of the shower, she had to grip the door frame and wait for her vision to clear. She told herself it was just the steam, or she hadn't had enough coffee. But those were the flares you're talking about. Her body was telling her that her blood pressure was crashing and her skin barrier was gone. Those mini dizzy spells are your brain's way of saying, I am losing my grip on stability. If you feel your heart racing as you dry your hair, or if your legs feel like jelly the moment you step onto the bath mat, those aren't just signs of age, they are signs of an impending catastrophe.
Helen's story is a perfect example of how we rationalize away our danger. We don't want to admit we are vulnerable, so we blame the steam or the coffee. But when you see a patient like Helen, whose skin is literally cracking open and whose balance is failing, what is the immediate intervention? If someone is listening right now and realizes, oh my goodness, I do feel like my legs are jelly every morning, what are the first 3 steps they need to take to break that cycle before they end up like Margaret with a broken wrist?
The very first step is to acknowledge that the jelly legs are a medical signal, not a personal failing. I told Helen she had to immediately lower her water temperature. If the bathroom is turning into a sauna, it's too hot. Second, she needed to start hydrating before the shower. Many of us are slightly dehydrated in the morning, which makes our blood pressure even more unstable when we hit the hot water. And third, I told her to sit to survive. Use a shower chair. There is no shame in sitting down to wash. In fact, it's a brilliant way to ensure that even if you do get a little lightheaded, you're already in a safe, seated position. Helen eventually realized that by making these changes, she didn't just feel safer, she felt better. Her skin stopped bleeding because she wasn't scalding it, and her head stayed clear because her blood pressure wasn't plummeting. We have to listen to those whispers from our body before they turn into screams on the bathroom floor.
Sanjay, I want to talk about the window. We've all been there. We hop out of the shower, we rub ourselves dry with a big fluffy towel until our skin is bone dry, and then maybe we go get dressed or have breakfast. And only much later do we think, oh, I should probably put on some lotion because I feel itchy. But you've suggested that there is a golden window of just about 2 minutes that can determine whether our skin stays healthy or starts to resemble a piece of cracked leather. It sounds like a race against time. Why is that specific 2-minute mark so critical? And what is the science behind this sponge effect you often talk about?
It really is a race, Jane, and most of us are losing it every single day. The American Academy of Dermatology, the AAD, is very specific about this. The best time to moisturize is when your skin is still damp. Think of your skin like a dry kitchen sponge. If you pour thick soap or lotion onto a bone-dry, hard sponge, it just sits on top. But if the sponge is slightly damp, it drinks that moisture in instantly. When you step out of the shower, your skin cells are hydrated and plump from the water. If you wait 10 or 20 minutes to apply lotion, all that water evaporates into the air, and as it evaporates, it actually pulls more moisture out of your skin, leaving you drier than you were before you got in. You have about 120 seconds to lock that water in. You should pat yourself dry gently, never rub, because rubbing creates friction and heat that damages the skin, and then immediately slather on a thick cream-based moisturizer while your skin is still dewy.
That pat, don't rub advice is going to be a hard one for people. We love that vigorous towel dry feeling, but it's fascinating that by being too thorough with the towel, we are actually sabotaging ourselves. I've noticed that as we get older, even a small scratch or a bit of dry, cracked skin takes forever to heal, and it can become a real gateway for infection. Is this golden window moisturizer routine actually a form of preventative medicine against more serious issues like cellulitis or chronic inflammation?
It absolutely is preventative medicine. For a 20-year-old, a crack in the skin is a minor inconvenience. For an 80-year-old, that same crack can be the entry point for a staph infection or cellulitis, which can quickly become systemic and life-threatening. The National Institute on Aging emphasizes that maintaining skin integrity is one of the most overlooked aspects of senior health. When you use that 2-minute window to apply a high-quality, fragrance-free cream, something thick that comes in a jar, not a thin, watery pump lotion, you are essentially creating a synthetic lipid barrier to replace the one your body is struggling to produce. This keeps the skin flexible. Flexible skin doesn't tear when you bump your leg against the bed frame. It doesn't itch, which means you aren't scratching and creating open sores. It sounds so simple, almost too simple to be medicine, but that 2-minute habit is the difference between having skin that protects you and skin that betrays you.
We spend billions of dollars in this country on anti-aging creams and treatments to look younger, but it seems to me, Sanjay, that the most important anti-aging move we can make has nothing to do with wrinkles and everything to do with the floor of our shower. We've touched on the fear of falling, but I want to talk about the reality of it. When a person over 80 falls, it isn't just a medical event. It's often a pivot point for their entire family. The statistics from the CDC are staggering, yet we still treat things like grab bars or non-slip mats as if they are ugly or admissions of defeat. Why is there such a stigma around bathroom safety, and how do we reframe these tools as independence savers rather than disability markers?
That stigma is a silent killer, Jane. People feel that the moment they put a plastic chair in their shower, they have officially become old, and they fight it with everything they have. I think of Eleanor, an 83-year-old woman from Eugene, Oregon. Eleanor was sharp as a tack, lived alone in a beautiful house, and prided herself on her agility. One morning, she reached across the shower to grab a bar of soap that had slipped out of her hand. In that 1 second of overextension, her foot slipped on the soapy tile. She fell and shattered her hip. The CDC reports that falls are the leading cause of injury-related death for those 65 and older, and a broken hip for someone Eleanor's age is a devastating blow. About half of those who break a hip never regain their previous level of independence. Eleanor went from living alone to a rehabilitation center and then to assisted living, all because of a bar of soap. I told her family later, a grab bar isn't a sign of weakness. It's a tool of power. It's the difference between staying in your home for 10 more years or leaving it tomorrow.
A tool of power. I love that reframing. It's like a seatbelt in a car. We don't wear it because we are bad drivers. We wear it because the environment is inherently risky. Eleanor's story is a wake-up call for anyone who thinks they can just be careful. Being careful isn't enough when gravity and wet tile are involved. If we were to look at a safety checklist for the bathroom, what are the 3 or 4 non-negotiable items that every person over 60 should have installed right now without delay?
It's a very short list with a very big impact. First, non-slip mats or adhesive strips, both inside and outside the tub. The moment you step out with wet feet, you are on ice. Second, grab bars that are professionally bolted into the wall studs, not the suction cup ones, which can fail. You need something that can support your full body weight if you stumble. Third, adequate lighting. Many bathrooms are dim, and as our vision ages, we need more light to judge distances and see invisible soap puddles. And fourth, a reach-friendly setup. Everything you need, soap, shampoo, towel, should be at waist height so you never have to reach up or bend down, which are the 2 movements that most often trigger a dizzy spell. Eleanor told me later she wished she had spent $50 on a grab bar instead of $50,000 on a hospital stay. We have to stop being proud and start being protected. These aren't old people accessories. They are the infrastructure of a long, healthy life.
We've spent a lot of time today talking about the dangers, but I don't want our listeners to walk away feeling like the bathroom is a war zone they should avoid. There is still so much beauty and ritual in bathing. It's one of the few times in a busy day when we are truly alone with our thoughts, where the water can feel like a spiritual cleansing as much as a physical one. As we look toward the future of how we age, can we find a way to make the bath a therapy again? How do we combine the safety measures you've suggested with a sense of peace and mental well-being? Is it possible for a 75-year-old to have a spa-like experience that actually strengthens their heart and mind instead of endangering them?
Absolutely, Jane. I don't want anyone to be afraid of their shower. I want them to be mindful of it. When you do it right, lukewarm water, a gentle scent-free cleanser, a safe seated position, it becomes a meditative practice. Harvard Health has discussed how routine and structure can significantly lower anxiety in seniors. If you use those 5 or 10 minutes to breathe deeply, to focus on the sensation of the water without the shock of extreme heat, you are actually lowering your cortisol levels. You are telling your nervous system that you are safe. I recommend a 5 sense approach: the sight of a well-lit, clutter-free room, the sound of the water, the touch of a soft, non-abrasive washcloth, and the feeling of a rich moisturizer afterward. This therapeutic bath can improve circulation gently, help you sleep better, and give you a sense of agency over your own body.
It sounds like a shift from escaping the world to connecting with yourself. When we slow down and pay attention to the temperature, the texture of the soap, and the way we move, we are practicing a form of body awareness that actually makes us more agile and less likely to fall in the first place. It's almost like a daily check-in with our own physical vessel. Do you think this mindful approach to bathing can also help with the isolation and depression that so many seniors face?
I truly believe it can. Self-care is a powerful antidote to the feeling that you are fading away. When you take the time to protect your skin and secure your environment, you are making an investment in your own value. You are saying, my body is worth protecting. The Cleveland Clinic often emphasizes that how we treat our skin and our safety is a reflection of our overall health management. Coming out of the bathroom with skin that feels hydrated and a head that feels clear and steady, that is a victory. It's a win to start your day. It gives you the confidence to go for that walk or visit those friends. We aren't just washing, we are preparing ourselves to engage with life. The goal is to exit that bathroom door feeling refreshed, resilient, and ready for whatever the day brings, knowing you've given your body the respect it deserves.
Sanjay, this has been such an eye-opening journey through a room we all take for granted. We've learned that the pleasures of our youth, the scalding water, the fragrant lathers, the quick hops in and out, can become the perils of our golden years. But more importantly, we've learned that we have the power to change the narrative. It's not about doing less, it's about doing better. As we wrap up this episode of Healthy Kidneys After 60, I want to leave our listeners with a sense of mission. We've covered a lot of ground, from Margaret's fall to Robert's skin issues to the golden window of moisturizing. If you could distill all this wisdom into a final message for the person sitting in their kitchen right now, perhaps feeling a little nervous about their next shower, what would you say to them?
My final message is this: aging is not a process of breaking down, it is a process of adapting. Your body is still a miracle, but it's playing by a new set of rules now. To live a long, vibrant life, you must respect those rules. Don't let a bathroom fall or a skin infection be the thing that robs you of your independence. Remember the 3 golden rules we've discussed. First, keep it lukewarm and keep it short. Heat is a thief of moisture and a master of dizziness. Second, protect your barrier. Use gentle, fragrance-free cleansers and seal in that moisture within 2 minutes of stepping out. And third, armor your environment, install the grab bars, use the mats, and never be too proud to sit down. These aren't concessions to age, they are strategies for victory. Thank you for having me, Jane. It's been an honor to share these stories and hopefully save a few hips and hearts along the way.
Thank you, Dr. Gupta. Your insight has turned a daily chore into a life-saving strategy. To everyone listening, please take these words to heart. Walk into your bathroom today and look at it through this new lens of safety and gentleness. You've worked hard for your independence. Don't let a slippery floor take it away. We are so glad you joined us today on Healthy Kidneys After 60. If you found this conversation helpful, please subscribe to our channel so you don't miss our upcoming podcasts, where we will continue to dive into the health secrets that keep us thriving well into our 80s and 90s. Until next time, stay safe, stay hydrated, and most importantly, stay steady on your feet. I'm Jane Pauley, and we'll see you in the next episode.